trade language, and a platform for knowledge and networking. We have already begun the process of obtaining a regional accreditation, starting with the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, while exploring and reaching out to other accrediting bodies. The Academy also started implementing a proof of concept using the Certificate of Trade Finance in Africa, a flagship trade finance course that is one of the most comprehensive in Africa, with Africa it runs in collaboration with Factor Chain International and the American University in Cairo. Distinguished guests, let me conclude with a saying, and being a banker, we're always looking for the best return on our investments. So let me end with a quote from Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin says, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. We are reminded that there cannot be economic progress or transformation without investing in education. And so we thank Afrexim Bank and partners for everything that they have been doing in that space to ensure that we are up to speed to leverage the AFCFTA. Now, as we come to the end of this initial session, which is really allowing the key players and partners of this great event to bring words of the progress that they're making and the new things that we can rely on them for. I wish to thank our speakers, our special guests, the Executive Secretary of the ITC, Madam Pamela Cork-Hamilton. Thank you for your intervention. Dr. Mani Asfor, we thank you, Madam, for your insights, which you shared with us. And of course, Mr. Yusuf Daya of Afrexim Bank, thank you for those remarks. And now we are going to, yes, we may please give them a round of applause. For those who just joined us, I wish to remind you of the topic of this panel discussion. The theme is breaking barriers, expanding horizons, capitalizing on trade opportunities through education. We are here to seek to examine the significance of education in equipping micro, small, and medium enterprises to navigate the AFCFTA marketplace effectively. Once again, we have our esteemed panelists who are ready to give us insights and to share with us some nuggets that we can move forward with, and hopefully also some recommendations to help set the tone as we move into the African Union Year of Education, which is the year 2024. So we are going to move into the panel discussion now. I will take my seat and we will begin the interventions. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, there is one more presentation before we move into that next session. I have the real pleasure of inviting up to the podium the Director for Institutional Matters and Programs Coordination at the AFCFTA Secretariat by the person of Prudence Sehabizi. You're representing. Okay. Prudence Sebahizi, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Let me start by recognizing my dear sisters, Dr. Pamela, Dr. Amani, Mr. Dea, my brother, and distinguished panelists here. I was expected to deliver a keynote speech by the AFCFTA Secretary General, His Excellency Wamukele Mene, who is not able to be with us this evening because of other engagements that just came up. But I would seek your indulgence so that I can take a few minutes of your time to read his statement. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to join you this afternoon. I'm speaking in the name of Wamukele. It's a great pleasure to join you this afternoon and an honor to deliver the keynote address at this important event. It is indeed a delight to be a part of the conversation today that explores to shed light on the intersection of the AFCFTA and education, as well as the emerging approaches and initiatives to educate medium, small, and micro enterprises to trade competitively across Africa. First and foremost, let me thank my colleagues at the African Business Council, Dr. Amani, our sister Pamela, the Executive Director of International Trade Center, and our brother from the Afrexim Bank for the collaboration to convene this crucial high-level meeting on breaking barriers, expanding horizon, capitalizing on FCFTA opportunities through education on the margins of this third Intra-African Trade Fair. Ladies and gentlemen, as you may be aware, the objectives of the FCFTA is to ensure free circulation of goods and services that are produced in Africa or with Africa raw materials. The private sector, composed of traders, investors, and producers, is therefore a key player in the FCFTA agreement. Without a strong private sector, which has the ability to produce and export competitively, African countries will not be able to take full advantage of the FCFTA market. Africa's private sector accounts for about 80% of the total production and employs 90% of the working age population, according to the recent Continental reports. The private sector role is therefore vital to fully unlock benefits of the FCFTA, as it offers huge opportunities for the private sector. For the private sector in Africa to thrive and to take advantage of the huge opportunities of the continent, that the continent offers, governments must be intentional and deliberate about creating the right environment, using policy to ensure that the private sector is able to scale up investment and production to supply the one market that we have in FCFTA. In recognition of on the pivotal role of the private sector to deliver on the promises of the FCFTA Secretariat, in collaboration with our partners, is implementing an inclusive private sector engagement plan, which is based on the 4 initial priority value chains, which are agribusiness and agro-processing, pharmaceutical industry, automotive, and transport and logistics. Each of those value chains identified present an opportunity for enhanced participation of women and youth. The effective implementation of these value chains will help to accelerate the role of trade as a means of advancing our continental economic integration and the Agenda 2063. Together, these 4 sectors represent $130 billion in goods and services imports. The FCFTA Secretariat has also, in collaboration with partners, introduced a number of instruments to support the private sector in Africa to start trading under the FCFTA. And these, you know very well, include the FCFTA Guided Trade Initiative, the AFCFTA e-tariff book, which is now accessible on the AFCFTA website, the Rules of Origin manual, which is also available on the AFCFTA website, the AFCFTA Adjustment Fund, which together with Afreximbank has been established and is housed in Kigali, Rwanda, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, which is a digital platform and infrastructure for payments and settlement to facilitate businesses, especially payment, and the FCFTA dispute settlement mechanism, which is a dispute settlement body established at the FCFTA Secretariat. And all these instruments have been designed as tools to ensure that legitimate business transactions thrive within the continent. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, another important operational instrument of the FCFTA is the African Trade Observatory, which is developed to provide market intelligence to the African business community, policymakers, academia, and think tanks. And this has been developed with the help of ITC. To complement the African Trade Observatory, the FCFTA Secretariat has recently signed MOU with Zenith Bank for the development of the FCFTA Smart Portal, which is intended to promote trade within the African continent. We also have in place another important initiative to engage private sector, which is namely the Intra-African Trade Fair, which brought all of us here, being jointly organized by the FCFTA Secretariat, the African Union Commission, Afreximbank, and African Development Bank, which is now holding as the third edition. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we make efforts to strengthen our engagement with the private sector to be at the forefront of the implementation of the FCFTA, education emerges as a powerful catalyst for empowering entrepreneurs, equipping them with the essential expertise and resources to effectively navigate the complexities of the African and global market. Clearly, an educated and informed business hold a competitive advantage. It drives innovation and adapts to ever-changing market dynamics. Clearly, the economic transformation that we anticipate with the FCFTA market, therefore, hinges on Africa closing the scientific and technological gap with the rest of the world and sustainably producing the right set of skills to expand both extra and intra-African trade. Science and technology, as it has been highlighted, and innovation, they must therefore be placed at the center of the implementation of the FCFTA. Through innovation, the continent has an opportunity to enhance its development and improve the quality of life of all Africans. This is possible as innovation enables the increased competitiveness of Africa's economies, the formation of new technology-based firms, the renewal and modernization of existing industries, the exploitation of new resources of economic growth, and the promotion of sustainability. Also, while Africa, the youngest continent, continues to experience a youth bulge, there is a mismatch between education and training and the needs of the enterprise, as the chairperson of African Business Council highlighted. Africa, therefore, must prepare its youthful population by anticipating future skill needs. Emerging evidence from country-level studies suggests that special attention will need to be paid to subjects of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics when developing new and more relevant education curricula. We need to build capacities and skills in STEM subject if we are to realize the progress towards sustainable and inclusive growth. and we need to ensure that the percentage of teachers trained with the ability to deliver STEM subject is increased. Therefore, incentives must be given to encourage interest and passion for STEM subjects. Moreover, investment in soft skills such as problem solving, creative thinking, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, digital skills, and languages will ensure that young Africans can co-create and innovate together in an increasingly competitive global economy. As you agree with me, if the private sector is the engine growth, then education is the fuel that runs the engine. To make a difference, we need to consider the following. First, we must invest heavily in the early years. Early childhood experience have a profound and lasting impact on brain development, affecting everything from learning to health to lifetime earning potential. But today, millions of young Africans, especially young children, are not receiving what they need to reach their full potential. About 98 million children are out of school in Africa, and the continent will require 17 million additional teachers in order to achieve universal primary and secondary education by 2030. Secondly, we need to rethink what we teach and how children learn. To prosper in a rapidly changing world, all children need more than a basic education. They need to be creative, critical thinkers who develop a lifelong thirst for knowledge and problem solving. Today, we're equipped with advances in technology that can support teaching and learning and boost creativity and critical thinking. In all this, the role of the teacher remains critical in many parts of the world. Students, especially girls, are deprived of education due to the lack of female teachers. Furthermore, we need an education system that provides relevant skills for today's market and the jobs of the future. In the global economy, growth and innovation demand an educated, skilled, and engaged workforce. So we must dramatically increase our aspiration for both the quantity and the quality of investments in education and skills. If we fail, we will leave behind a large population through no fault of their own. Then they will struggle to find quality employment. Again, in the areas of skill training, it is important for government to make necessary investment, particularly in the youth, to ensure that they possess the necessary skills to meet the demand of the highly specialized labor force that the oil companies require to ensure smooth operations. We know Africa has a young, dynamic, and energetic population, and TVET, technical, vocational education and training, offer a huge driver in industrialization, economic empowerment, and job creation. The realization of these objectives depend on collaboration and partnerships to create the right condition to develop centers of excellence to the continent. For instance, we need to strengthen the collaboration between academia, governments, and private sector to ensure adequate funding is provided and that the conditions are put in place for science to thrive. As I conclude, I hope it is not a long speech. I'm confident that today's exchange of views and experiences will provide a useful source of information in our collective efforts to develop strategies and measures to ensure education plays its strategic role in the Africa's sustainable and inclusive development. I end the quote. Thank you very much for your kind attention. This was the keynote speech by my boss, the Secretary General.
Thank you so much, Prudence, for bringing us word from His Excellency Wamkele. And just to recap on some of the things that you have said, it is a delight to hear the tremendous resources and commitment by the Secretariat towards helping micro, small, medium enterprises navigate the AFC FTA landscape. It is also very key that the Secretariat has recognized the role of the private sector as being germane in the process that is unfolding. And we're, of course, very glad that it has also prioritized the support and the empowerment to ensure that the private sector is able to fully participate in the unfolding opportunity. So please send our regards to His Excellency, and thank you for bringing those keynote messages. Without wasting time, I'd like us to proceed into the next session, which is the panel discussion itself. Please make yourself comfortable as we move into this very insightful session. And let's give our panelists a warm welcome. Again, I will do a quick introduction because our panelists have been very patiently waiting for us to come to them. And for the benefit of those who may have just joined this session, the title is Breaking Barriers, Expanding Horizons, Capitalizing on the AFC FTA Opportunities Through Education. And we have with us on the stage here eminent experts and leaders in the space of youth education, members of the private sector who are diligently working away with the key players around the intra-African trade opportunity. First, to my left-hand side, we have Professor Pat Utomi, Chairman, Pan-Africa Private Sector Trade and Investment Committee, PAFTRAC. You're most welcome, sir. Next on, we have Anneli Simon. She is Secretary General, Independent Continental Youth Advisory Council on the AFC FTA. That is ICOYACA for short. Thank you for joining us. Next in line, we have Dr. Farid Kwesi Arthur. He is the National Coordinator for the National AFC FTA Coordination Office in Ghana. You're welcome, sir. Next on, we have Madam Chinwe Florence Ezenwa. She is the CEO, Leluk Bag Academy of Nigeria. You're welcome, ma'am. And last but certainly not least, we have Madam President for the Organization of Women in International Trade and the CEO founder of Passion Profit, Madam Frida Owinga. You're welcome. So I am going to go into the session we've already set the context, and some of the things that we are talking about really here is to explore the transformative opportunities presented by the interconnection between education and trade for African MSMEs, right? So we have already established a theme of the panel discussion, and I'm just going to go straight in with a question for the Prof. Prof. Utomi. Could you please tell us the role education has in leveraging the potential of the AFC FTA? Much has been said so far, but as an expert in your space, with decades of insight, which you're able to bring forward to help maybe clarify where we are going with all of this intra-African trade opportunity, especially when we talk about the element of competition that will come with that opportunity. It's one African trade marketplace, and so everyone can play. What role will education play?
A very big one. I ask myself sometimes, and I wonder if people reflect on this, every survey that comes back says most Africans, SMEs, SMS, MEs particularly, say they don't know about AFTA. It's not because they've not heard of it. They have heard of it. But they don't know what it means for them. They don't know how it will translate into value in their lives. They don't know how through it they can do X, Y, Z. And so we have to distinguish between information and education. In dealing with the difference between information and education, let me just provide an example through a story. There is a certain gentleman from a very small African country called Gambia. Gentleman was in high school, was very good at masonry and that kind of work. But it was infra-dig, to want to have that kind of skill developed. So he was preparing to go to university to go and study chemistry. And somehow the class teacher, who knew he was very skilled in that area, woodwork and stuff, went to plead with his parents to just allow him at least register those courses for the O-levels. And, even if he didn't study those things, but at least, because he would do well in the O-levels in those. So parents agreed, encouraged him, he registered. And he did remarkably well in those subjects. He was kept back by the school as a pupil tutor. And a couple of a year or two later, he joined one of the multinational companies there as an engineer's assistant. Well, what can you do in small Gambia? It is so small, what can you really do if you want to build a business? Well, I tell you, that gentleman began to look to develop small estates in Gambia. And then an African head of state was visiting Gambia and saw these low-cost houses and said, those look nice. I would like, and the president of Zambia said to him, it's one of our young men who's doing it. He said, I'd like to meet him. And he meets this chap and invites him to come to his country. His country is Mali. And he goes to Mali and he meets this African head of state, Malian president. When he got to the meeting, there was no translator, interpreter. He spoke no French. The president of Mali spoke no English.
Oh dear.
He immediately realized that there was a problem and flew literally after that to Paris to go and embed himself in the study of French. And then he kept saying, I need to expand. But Gambia is such a small country. So he said to his friends he wished he could get into Nigeria. And by coincidence, a friend of his ran into a Nigerian official on a flight. And he talked about this. He said, let him come. We're trying to develop estates in Abuja. He came to Nigeria, ended up building one of the biggest housing estates in Nigeria. It's called the Rivtav Estate in Port Harcourt. He thrived so much from that, he's today building a new city bigger than the capital city of Banjul in Gambia. His name is Mustafa Njai.
Yes.
Now, why did I tell this story? I've spent weeks talking with Mustafa, visiting these places, and I've written for Path Track a case study. And I'm writing several others just to provide example. And this is what will really lead to learning. Small guy, small country, small scale, is trying to now build 1 million housing units in Africa. This is how we need to teach people. I have a book that's coming out early in the new year, and it's based on my approach, which I call the pedagogy of the determined. It's nothing extremely fancy. It comes out of original thinking of a Brazilian educator called Paulo Freire, who wrote a book that was titled The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. The oppressed people, colonized people, have a mindset that's treated like a piggy bank. You just deposit enough for the people to maintain things. And you know, I can go along with that, so I better leave it there. But the point is, look at Africa. In the 1970s, late 70s, early 80s, mid-80s, really, we were suffocated by the Washington Consensus. These people from outside who will teach us how to really run our economies, the things we must change, the conditionalities, and all of that. I remember coming to Nairobi to a conference that brought together African finance ministers, select African business leaders, and I guess academics. I'm not sure which category I came under, the academic or the business leader, because I was actually running a multinational company at the time. But all these fancy ideas of what will happen in Africa after structural adjustment, we ended up worse than we were before structural adjustment as a continent. Because knowledge is manufactured by people who don't know your experience and forced on you as the way to make a difference. We must create knowledge on this continent and share it with our people.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Thank you very much for
okay.
that, sir. So that was a very interesting perspective, Prof. And I'd like to be sure that I heard you. You are really talking about us looking inwards and not really discarding what is in our environment, and not overlooking the skills that are indigenous to our territories. I think you're saying that it is important to amplify these examples and to tell those stories in order for us to learn. Would that be right, sir?
Quite right. But you need a strategy.
Great.
And that strategy must be based on practical transformation, where the individual in learning comes to learning with a purpose that me, not them, me, this knowledge I have will lead to a change from where we are now to where I dream that we will be in 20
Thank you
years.
for that, Prof. Thank you for that insight. Please, can we give Prof a warm round of applause? That is very insightful. Thank you for the Mustafa and Jay case study. I see that Anele, you're nodding. You're nodding. There are some things that Prof is saying that is resonating with you. Do you want to share a perspective, given the focus that your organization has on the youth, right? Do you see many examples of maybe ideas being suppressed and the youth not really having a lot of encouragement to be able to amplify their position or even elevate the gifts that they have? Can you maybe add one or two things to what Prof has said and give us some examples too, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. I totally agree. That's why I'm nodding so vehemently, because with the youth, we are trying to train on capacity building, different market dynamics, cross-cultural dynamics when you want to export, etc., the different non-tariff barriers that you have to go through. And a lot of the time, we're always saying that what we're seeing is one of the biggest, if I'll call it a non-tariff barrier, is our own mindset. This mindset of, we tell people about AFCFTA, they're already so despondent. They don't want to believe it. They're not really forging ahead. And we have to get through that hurdle just for somebody to start. But being around here today, the rest of the week as well at IATF, it's been very encouraging seeing youth that are here, that are doing things. Of course, they are learning as they go, because you can't edit a blank page. Other people want you to just have a business and it's going to boom. They want to move in silence because that's how we do things as youth, but they're not collaborating. They're not coming to spaces like this. They're not taking the time to educate, to see who, what, where is already doing it. So it's a very big hurdle. And sometimes we're trying to say, in some regions it's quiet, we're trying to go there, but look already within Africa what other youth are doing. Look already what other people are trying with the skills that you have, and sometimes you even have better skills. So mindset is a very, very big problem and a hurdle that we have to overcome every single day.
Thank you so much for that. So I'd like to perhaps move on from yourself and go to President Owit, because I'd like to get your perspective on an aspect of what Prof has just mentioned. He talked about the lack of information to be able to translate that into value, right? So because you lead a very prominent women organization, which is international and across many African countries as well, I would like you to bring the female perspective from the women entrepreneurship angle, right? Can we say that there is a distinguishing between information and education, right? Because they sound similar, but they're two separate things, aren't they? You know, so now narrowing this down to the issue of education and where our women who are in trade are at, do you feel that this issue of lack of information, which is preventing them to translate what they know into value, is this something that applies? And if so, what is OWIT doing to address that problem, to bridge the gap between information and education? Both are required, I believe. But let's just hear your experience and let's learn from some of the things that is working for OWIT. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tokumbo. For those that don't know OWIT, OWIT stands for Organization of Women in International Trade, and our mission is to foster international trade and the advancement of women in business. It's an American organization with over 20 chapters around the world, and growing very fast in Africa. We have 10 chapters in Africa currently. So the difference between information and education and what we are doing at OWIT, the first is we have all kinds of women at OWIT. We have trade professionals, people who sit in Washington. They're trade brokers, custom brokers, they're lawyers, they understand trade law. And then we have the lady in Africa who is a farmer. Maybe she's in Nyeri or she's in any other rural area and is trying to get her goods across the borders. So we are vast like that, and trade information is complex. Trade information, before we even get to trade information, business is hard. Business is very hard. Business is hard because we don't have the education to really teach us how to run business. We have education to teach us how to work in corporate organizations, which is very different. So even business education and entrepreneurship are two very different things. And then now we are talking about information. Trade information is complex, even for lawyers. And I'll give you an example to drive home what we do with a little story. My mom was a trader. And her goods went abroad, but she never went abroad. She was not educated. How did her goods get abroad, and how did she get the money? She worked with other people that were, somebody talked about value chains, other people that were exporting. So one of the organizations she worked with was exporting things to the UK, to America, to around the world, literally. And this organization was kind enough to provide the information that's required, do all the documents. All the women needed to do was bring their goods in one-stop shop, get paid, and get on their way. OWIT does similar. And OWIT does similar today, and it's more advanced because we are not working with one shop in a city. We are working with organizations like ITC. ITC is a house of information. They are very generous. They're the ones who have supported us to be here for the exhibition, but also take us through different master classes so that we can understand what is required for us to move our goods, for us to export in. What is AFCFTA? What do we need to do? Where's all the information? How can we access it? And they were kind enough to do a 6-month lab with us that helped the women go through that. It was virtual. You can access it from anywhere in the world if you have Wi-Fi. So we do not work alone, but we work with organizations like ITC. The US Department of Commerce is very close to us because it's an American organization, but it has arms in all over the world. We work with NASPIDE, we work with FIT. So all these are organizations that have information and education for women in trade. But beyond that, even us within OWIT, now the face of OWIT is changing because we have people who are leadership consultants, training consultants, people who understand business dynamics that can, we have peer mentoring that is going on. We can support each other to grow. But most importantly, it happens through partnerships. So the difference between information and education, if I could just add as I wind up, is number one, we need more than information. We need inspiration. Because business is hard, trade is harder. And women are generally not as confident as other people, all right? So we tend to feel things need to be perfect before we get out of the door. So we need the soft skills. So the training that we are getting around trade is excellent, it's really technical, but we also need inspiration to let us know we can do it, to let us know if we fail, it's all right. To give us a safe space where we can talk about what is working, learn from what is not working, we inspire each other so that we're getting inspiration, information, and whatever else we need. Ideally, information, inspiration, and the ability to influence others in what it is that we are doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank
That
you.
was a very full answer. Please let's give Madam a round of applause. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So I am still coming back to you because I am very interested in the classification of the women that are made up within the Owit family. Because when we're talking about education, we also have to, think about women who are not necessarily within the formal sector, but they are part of the ecosystem of trade. How do we reach those women? So that's just something for you to think about whilst I quickly go to Ghana to get some insights on what great things they're doing to facilitate the involvement of SMEs in this amazing opportunity of the AFCFTA. So this is to you, Dr. Arthur. This has been a year of the acceleration of the AFCFTA. I think you will agree with us. Earlier on I talked about the amazing implementation of the Guided Trade Initiative, which is really a small pilot of the vision of the AFCFTA as it is unfolding. And that has gone very well. We're now moving towards the second phase. What I wanted to ask you is whether the Ghanaian private sector at all levels are aware of the opportunities of the free trade area. And what precisely is your contribution as an organization to that awareness that we hope that they have? Over to you, sir.
Thank you. And all protocols observed. Having my question coming at a point where we are now, I would say that we have been working with the private sector, and sometimes we need to be humble enough to realize that we rather need to be educated. We go into the arena. We go into the arena thinking that these people don't know anything. The private sector is very resilient.
Yes.
The Ghanaian youth, the Ghanaian woman is very resilient, and it cuts across Africa from my own experience. If I was to use a prof's analogy, I would say maybe we need to be cautious of the pedagogy of arrogance.
Pedagogy.
And so, having said this, let me share my experience with you. When Ghana set up the National Coordination Office, our first thing was, we started having a lot of sensitization, education, awareness, and all that. And as much as we were doing, we still got the pushback that we don't know what AFCFTA is. We don't know what AFCFTA is. But then we said, okay, let's revisit our model, because we went in thinking we're going to teach them. The Ghanaian woman has been trading, the African woman has been trading in Africa for the last 100 years. They form the core of the trading cadre. And they move across Africa. They don't go to Europe, but they go to Nigeria. If you go to Nigeria, it's a Ghanaian small scale that carries goods to Nigeria. They go to Burkina Faso to buy tomatoes. They bring food and everything. So they know the African terrain. These are experts in their own area, and they have a lot to teach us, you know. And so that was my first point of learning. And then we also discovered that when people say they don't know, and I think Prof alluded to that, I don't know about the AFCFTA. These days, formerly I used to get very worried. These days I don't anymore. Because I say, how many of us here know about WTO? AFCFTA is only 4 years. And the ripple that we have made is far more than WTO did in its first 4 years. You know, so I really don't want us to hit too much ourselves. We are doing well. In Ghana, we introduced a program we call the Market Access Program. And that program was based on the simple understanding that AFCFTA will not be litigated in conference rooms, that we will only be judged at the end by being able to foster trade, open up the borders for trading. And so we went into, yes, we did our homework, and then we came up with 3 categories of potential people who could trade. And that was the first category we discovered, were people who already traded with Africa long before AFCFTA was even dreamt of. You know, the Ghanaians have been going to Nigeria, to Gambia, to South Africa, to Angola all these years. If you go to Angola, there's a Ghanaian colony there. You know, and so on and so forth. You come to Angola, especially the seafaring people. And so this was the first group. And when you analyze that first group, most of them were women, most of them were small scale. You know, so that was a big opener for us. Then the second group of people who we thought we could deal with were those companies that export to non-African bases. And these were normally the bigger companies. They export primary products. You know. Then, of course, the third group was a group that produced for Ghana, but with the intention of selling to Ghana, but somehow the goods find themselves outside the Ghanaian continent. You go to Nigeria, you go to South Africa, these products are there. So we set up this market expansion. We did some analysis, worked with them, did some trainings and other things. And I always have to come back. In the trainings, we learned more from them than they learned from us, because we went in with the idea that we want to see how we can help. Not to tell them what they should do, but what should we do for them?
Yes.
And they were full of ideas. You know. I always recount one lady who came to our office one day with a product that comes from the very remote corner of Ghana. And she seemed so timid the first time, and she said, look, I'm selling this. It's a form of spice that is used only there. And at that time, we had announced that we wanted to do a market expedition to Nairobi. So we were looking at who could go. And we didn't want to focus it on Accra, so we said, let's pick up from everywhere, and we focused on women and youth. And so this lady comes in with this product. And I said, first we were a little bit apprehensive, but said, let's give it a chance. So we went with her. In May, we went with 63 Ghanaian businesses, mainly from small scale, micro, small. 40% of them were women.
Right.
Very few big time producers.
Yes.
And when we got there, this woman's product was the first that was sold out. Wow. And the reason why I refer to this woman is because the next time she came to our office, she was bubbling. She walked in with self-confidence.
Yeah.
I always tease her anytime I meet her. And she came in really bubbling, well-dressed and everything. And she said, look, I've gotten further supplies from Nairobi, but I don't have the money to let it go. Wow. That is where our work really started. So I'm just narrating the story to say that there is a wealth of learning that we need to do as we deal with these people. Absolutely. And Prof, thank you for giving me something that I can hang on to, that we must try and avoid this idea that we know more than they do, and start also eating humble pie.
Yes.
I think I'll stop at this point. Thank you.
I think we can all agree that these are excellent interventions and that we're really learning. And I think, Prof, you have started something, which I am interested in drilling into. I don't think we have much time, but I just want to still put it out there that there is a difference between, information and education. And Doc has now said that rather we have to take a position where we are saying that we still have much to learn from the players, because really indeed they are the ones who are navigating the market, and they have intelligence to help us formulate the right initiatives and the right policies that will take us to where we want to get to. And I think all of our speakers so far deserve a round of applause. We are really learning and we are moving forward. Now, Madam Frida had said, my next question will go to my senior colleague from Nigeria, Madam Ezenwe. The president of OWIT said that beyond education and information, we need inspiration. She also said that business is hard. Trade information is complex. And you are a real case study on this panel, because I don't know if we can have one of your bags to show the audience. You are a formidable entrepreneur making very beautiful products with such excellent branding and presentation. So I would like you to speak to the whole idea of, how hard or easy has it been? And when it was hard, Madam, where did you find your inspiration? What kept you going? And this can be things that are more structural in terms of within the ecosystem of support that is available with organizations like ITC, Afreximbank, so you can talk to us about those technical inputs that came from your external business to support you. But really, has business been hard? What is your own story as an entrepreneur, and what kept you going? Where did you find support, and where did you find inspiration when you needed it? It's over to you.
Thank you very much. I first of all must thank the African Business Council and their partners in ITC and Afreximbank for giving me this space where some ideas can flourish. I actually will tell you that God has been faithful, because I have been doing this business for the past 38 years. I'm 72 years now.
Wow.
And I was inspired by two of my relations who have some challenge. One was autistic, and the other one could not talk, and he couldn't hear. So when I came back from Canada with a skill in this bag making, I found my mother stranded with these two people who had no skill, nothing to do. So I decided I was going to set up a bag industry. I didn't have any support from anybody. But I had to teach them this skill so that they will have something to do. Because if you don't teach them, don't blame them. So from their challenge, I drew my inspiration. And then I was able to scale up the business. And on my 70th birthday, I decided I was going to give back to society. I decided to open a bag academy.
Wow.
And it was motivated more by women who were facing gender-based violence.
Right.
And I had to write a concept note to the United UNFPA, and they bought that idea. And when the school was completed, they were supportive, along with Nigerian Export Promotion Council, so that with AFCTA just coming around, I thought I should be able to produce an army of women that can face that competition.
Right.
Because if you don't have skill, what are you going to be trading on?
Yes.
What market are you going to face? You're going to be competing with Chinese, even though you have your rules of origin. So the school is more of a technical school where we teach them soft skills, we teach them technical skills on how to do the bags perfectly well. And I had to take some of these trainers to China so that we can steal some of their technology. Yes, I am bold to say that we did. and bring it back so that we can also start exporting to them.
Right.
Yes.
It's not just them dumping their goods in Nigeria. So I dare say that what Owit said is very important. I have become a source of inspiration to a lot of younger generation in Nigeria. Because when they come there, you have women with disabilities. They are working and they train them. And after 6-month training, we give them starter packs so they can be on their own. And some of them have even transferred this knowledge to Ghana. One of them is currently in Ghana, struggling to, export her services in bag making. And some are getting ready to go to Kenya. So business, I always tell people, is war. It's not hard, it is war. You have enemies on all the fronts. And the most difficult enemy you will have is your mind, like she said. But once you're able to overcome that and overcome certain cultural challenges, because in Nigeria, we have too much of that. We have a lot of youths, a lot of women, but because of cultural barriers, they are not able to come. But with this academy, even their husbands are releasing them to me. So I am grateful to the council for bringing me here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, madam. Yes, Prof wants to intervene. Yes.
I was closing by saying that we must have a strategy.
Yes.
She's doing fantastic work.
Yes.
But you see, unless we have a clear strategy, it will stay at this level. The kind of strategy that we need is we take something like this.
Yes.
Create these schools, whatever, across West Africa, wherever. They know the quality they should produce.
Yes.
We train people on the value chain, those who will aggregate these productions across these countries, bring them together. If you're going to sell those bags to Walmart, you will never make enough.
Yes.
But if 100 women or centers across West Africa are making exact same quality,
same thing,
and you pull them together and you supply 1 million pieces a day to Walmart, that's when we'll become significant in international trade.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. So I think that it is great, Prof, that you have said this to the hearing of Dr. Asmani. That is a challenge. This is something that is really needing impetus and action. How do we amplify, how do we replicate this success story in a way that makes sense? And that can be done from a regional perspective, so that in the east of Africa, we are doing it, in the west of Africa, we're doing it, and we're able to go beyond the African borders to supply into the global marketplace. This is really where the action is. You know, the AFCFTA is not just about the intra-African trade, but it's also to position us to be able to do global trade better. So I think this is a call to action, and it will be good for us to be able to move this forward. Lily, you are here. You can hear what has come out, and I think it's a brilliant idea anyway, because Madame is one of your one of the businesses that you are already supporting, and so the ideas can flow easily with all of the right people at the table. Now, I saw that you were nodding, Anele, and I think that you wanted to say something, but I would like to ask you to please speak to us around the current offerings that the youth entrepreneurs should consider when thinking about exporting and what might be missing. So we're talking about intra-African trade. You earlier spoke about the challenges around how daunting the opportunity can be if you are a small business. How do we make it less daunting? How do we present it in a way where it is an idea that is scalable at their level? What are the thoughts that you have, and what has your organization been doing to help make this accessible for the youth entrepreneurs?
Thank you. I think, like many of us on stage, we believe in collaboration, strategic collaboration, and if youth, again, are working by yourself in your own little corner, you're not going to learn as fast as you should be learning. And many of us, including at Ikoyaka, have been collaborating with the AFCFTA Secretariat on many of our programs. And we had our second edition of the AFCFTA Youth Day. By the way, it's Africa Youth Month in November. So we are having an AFCFTA Youth Day. And that was sponsored very generously, again, like everybody said, by ITC, who's given us technical support and financial support. Youth that are educated and who have skills, who've learned new things, are always energized. So one of the biggest ways to build their confidence is to get the education, to join others who are having the same challenges as you so you can grow together. And not only at country level, and then you grow at regional level, and that's how you take it forward. A lot of youth are complaining about things like standardization across the different markets and not having a lot of them that are exhibiting here, for example, have their products only in English or only in French. But you're trying to go into communities and countries that those are not their languages. And if you attend masterclasses and trainings like this, these are the things you're learning. So you're empowered, you're moving forward. But I also want to go back to Madam Frida's notion that business is hard, and not everybody is an entrepreneur. And AFCFTA is not only for entrepreneurs, because we consumers are also benefiting from having an open market and paying less. But what we are also doing and driving in capacity building at Ikoyaka is that we're also training professionals. I myself am an international trade lawyer. I know I'm not built for entrepreneurship, but I believe that international trade law is actually the backbone of this agreement. If the agreement is not respected, if the rules are not followed, and the benefits are not given as they should be, and what we've seen is that in all of our countries, we don't have international trade lawyers. All the international trade lawyers in Africa, we end up knowing each other because we're such a small community. And yet we have this huge agreement that doesn't have a strong enough backbone. But by collaborating strategically with AFCFTA, we are actually launching, as well as a capacity building exercise, the AFCFTA Moot Squad competition. What this basically is a simulation of a trade war between countries who are member states of AFCFTA, and trade lawyers from each side come together, going through a very robust, very technical, very intricate case. And from that, we're going to be able to draw out the talent. The law firms are also going to draw out the talent. We train more, and every year we get more of them. So business is not for everybody, but I believe that the AFCFTA is for all of us. So we have to be able to protect it. We need to go into universities. Everybody needs to know that you're not just talking about some pipe dream. This is something that's actually happening.
It's real. Yes, yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. And I think you make a valid point. Yes, please, let's applaud that. I think you make a valid point, which I think is often being overlooked, which is the role that the services sector actually has to play in pulling this whole agreement together, in being able to activate the opportunity. We're too focused on just the movement of persons and goods. We're not thinking about services. Exactly. People like yourself who are part of that intricate system that is going to make this work. And a lot of young people at the moment have degrees, but they don't have jobs, right? So there are opportunities to retrain as something else, and yes, you might not be built as an entrepreneur, but like Madam Frida said, if we are able to teach the business of business, how to do business, then it will be a lot easier for people to see themselves, being at the forefront of some emerging opportunity that the AFCFTA is creating. So thank you for that. Now, as we round up, it has been a very interesting and engaging opportunity. We heard earlier from His Excellency Wamkele that education has emerged as a potent catalyst for empowering entrepreneurs, equipping them with the essential expertise and resources to navigate the complexities of the African and global markets effectively. Now, as we close, this session really has been focused on the role that education has to play, and we have heard that there's a difference between education and information. As it stands, we haven't had enough time to really drill down on what these differences are, right? So we need another panel session somewhere else in the world where we can begin to pull these things apart. Yeah. The difference. Okay. Do I have permission, Lily?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Wait. Okay. So. Okay. All right. Thank you. So, Prof, let me remind you what you said.
Okay.
Yes. I'm sure you remember, but you had talked about lack of information, which then means that we're not able to translate things into value, right? So maybe you're speaking about what we have not been valued in the first place, that, though you are doing whatever Taff was doing before he had to go to university, it wasn't...
He didn't go to university, actually.
Yes. So he didn't
He
do
just
the
stopped
chemistry.
with that.
Yes.
Yeah, he didn't do the chemistry anymore.
But initially, the value wasn't seen. That was the problem. It wasn't seen as being valuable, right? Okay, so can you please then distinguish for us the difference between information and education? Because we're assuming that if people have information, they're therefore educated. It's an assumption, isn't it?
An assumption. Actually,
Okay.
Yusuf Dyer's quote from Benjamin Franklin really
Speaks to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Information is awareness. You are aware that, there's something there. But how does that awareness make me...
Give you impetus.
Absolutely. Capacity to do something that is valuable with... Because most people who have the awareness may actually be intimidated by being aware. Oh my God, this is too big. This one, Kelly, grammar. Okay, let's just leave the thing there. Person aware, but
it's
please.
Daunting.
Yes, But education says,
you can do it.
I can do this.
Here are the tools.
Here are the tools that I need to get it done. Let me quickly relate it to strategy. That's why I say we need strategy. Because in strategy, people can actually locate themselves in how that thing can be done. Now, my argument is that our strategy should focus first and foremost on our factor endowments. What are we endowed with that we are competitive at?
Yes.
People want to trade, do anything that can make some money. But if we have factor endowments, you know that in this place, let me give my favorite example. There's a part of Nigeria where the sesame seed is good for soup. So they make soup and enjoy the soup of sesame seed. Whereas they're actually chopping real money.
Yes.
Now,
because they don't know the value of exports. It's a high-value crop.
If the educational system is structured such that at primary school level, if you live in an area where sesame seeds are already growing in the wild, you know how to cultivate it to get certain kinds of yield per hectare. Another, couple of years down the line, by the time you are in high school, you actually know how to process it And so people will go into, okay, you are growing it, we are processing it, but we must take a value chain approach.
Right.
And the idea is because it's based on a factor endowment, we can actually become globally competitive and dominant on that value chain.
Right.
And structures start to be put in place from school curriculum for that area so that the education is taking place relative to the purpose of making those people capable. By the time the fellow is finishing high school, if you're talking to me about university, you'll be wondering if something is wrong with you. Just like Mustafa has proved that he didn't have to go to university. He's now a multi-millionaire and an educated man.
Yes. By other means.
By other means.
By other means.
Because he managed to follow a skill that he has.
Skill-based approach,
Right.
is it?
So,
Or skills-oriented?
yes. I mean, there's so many ways that we can skin a cat. And not everybody has to go to get it. Many of the educated, in fact, I like to tell a story about entrepreneurship. The first generation of people who got very rich in Africa were people who did things like run bakeries. So they baked bread, and they made a lot of money. And because they made a lot of money, they sent their children to medical school and to law school. And nobody continued baking in the family. And their doctor children became poor people. They are now doctors, but they are poor. But the rich man who was just a baker would have been able to train his children to take baking to another level, and his grandson will run a bakery chain from the 20th floor of their company-owned building, now baking bread in 20 cities around the country, electronically and all of that. So, but because we did not develop on those lines, we created poor children who had more prestigious education. And this is really so important for understanding why entrepreneurship has not been sustained in many parts of our continent. Because the things we knew how to do well, we thought our children should not do these things. They're in fatigue.
Yes.
But we got rich doing them.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Prof. I am under, I know that the audience is loving the conversation. Everybody wants to stay here, but we are really constrained. And before I offer my thanks to our very capable and expert panelists, I want to just, recap.
Anyway, I want to hold this up.
We will talk about that just afterwards, sir. So I think what we have agreed by all of these interventions is we need both an educated and informed MSMEs, right?
Yes.
We do not just want information, because that is simply awareness, but we want them to be in the place of being educated to be able to utilize what they possess, activate it, and make it valuable. That is what this whole conversation has been about. Then I think we also touched on the difference between formal and informal education. Informal education being what is already there, what is already working. And I think what Doc said touched on that a little bit, in the sense that you're saying, let's not ignore that there is intelligence on ground, that these people already have been doing this, and there is a level of insight that they have that can help us move things forward. I think that is the point that you made. And then when we have an educated and informed MSMEs, they will be able to hold a competitive advantage, right? And then Prof was saying we should link that to the comparative advantage or the regional value proposition. We should scale it, right? And we should know what value, or our value proposition as a country, as a region, as a continent. We should own that, we should develop it, and we should make systems and framework that will help us to be able to really leverage all of that. And then finally, I think we're agreeing with Prof when he said we needed a structured educational system, which takes into cognizance what is there. What is there in the space that we can work with? What is indigenous? Whether it be the regional value chain, in the regional value chain, or even in the space of knowledge of how to do certain crafts and certain skills that are indigenous to Africa is dying out. And we're not doing anything about it because we've discarded them, right? So education and information are not the same thing, is what we're saying. Information is a place of being aware. Education is really being in the place of having the tools to activate the knowledge or the awareness that you have to be able to bring value. Prof is saying that we must approach things strategically and make an integrated approach of our strategies. Is that correct? All right. I think at this point I'd like to thank all of our esteemed panelists. I will not mention your names again. We know you, you know us. We thank you for your interventions. Thank you for making time. We could go on and on. Please, let's give them a round of applause. I'd like to thank the ITC for the opportunity given to all of us and for allowing me to be part of the hosting of this session. Right now, I'd also like to thank Dr. Asmani for staying with us and for being committed to this conversation. And we thank you in advance for taking forward some of these recommendations because we know that you will. So to our audience, thank you for being amazing. Thank you for being engaging. And apologies that we couldn't really open the floor. We started late, but I'm sure there'll be a way that Lily can, what can they do? Can we send you emails with any ideas that we have? How do we get feedback to you on some of these things? Do you want to take the floor and just, we can ask some questions? Get in contact. Get in contact. Okay. So if you have questions, you're requested to please email the team at ITC, and they will be able to reach out to you with some responses. Now I'd like to invite our esteemed panelists, our keynote speakers, to please come on stage for a photograph, please, as we end the session. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
This is the CEO report. PAPTRAC carries out an annual survey of African CEOs. And you can,
I think
this year's survey is assessing the impact of ACTA on African trade.
Are there copies available?
I think so.
I think there are.
Patrick,
At the door as you go out.
Okay, so
At the door as you go out. Right. All right, thank you so much. Do we have the... do you need us to... Should we come forward? Oh, it's okay. Lily, join us. Like in the middle, do you wanna? Like in, yes. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Let's do some pictures together. Let me. It was nice hearing from you, sir. You're in South Africa.